What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the Alto again, and this time we are here with Peter of the Almighty Rendezvous Point. It is so great to have you here. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
yeah, it's so awesome to have you here with this new album, Dream Chaster. It's absolutely kick-ass from start to finish. I loved everything I heard so far, but for people who haven't heard the full album yet, do you feel like that the singles that we have heard so far, such as Utopia or Oslo Syndrome or Don't Look Up, is like a good representation of this whole record, or is this just one little taste?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely in the direction of what the album is going to be. Like, if you've heard those three songs, the rest of the album is going to be more or less in the same direction. A few songs, there are different vibes on the other songs. Like, there's one that's very heavy, like the Tormented, which is the seventh song on the album, and then you have the number sixth of the album, which is more like proggy with quintuplets and stuff like that for people who are into like rhythms and stuff like that. And then you have Presence, number 5, which is has more of an Eastern Middle East vibe to it. And then you have the ending song Stillwater, which is more kind of an atmospheric vibe, like trying to sound huge, orchestral, doomsday kind of sound. So there's a lot of different things, but it's all in the same heavy groove oriented type of sound that I think we were trying to go for on the first three singles.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you compare, because, I mean, even though your previous album, Universal Chaos, there's always been, a lot of different elements in it and, a lot of different styles and whatnot. So I think it's fair to say that experimentation is, almost essential or just, an important tool of the songwriting process, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's no, it's not like we have when we start writing our songs, we don't usually know how it's going to end up. It's just like building an idea on top of the other, and then I think we kind of know early on where the song is going and what type of direction, what kind of vibe it's going to have. But I think the thing is we're trying to go for a few different types of vibes, but it always ends up being heavy, of course, because that's how we like it.
Does it ever start off with a preconceived vision, or is it a very roll of the dice songwriting process in a way?
Yeah, I guess the latter, the more of a roll of the dice. Yeah, it could be a different thing as well. Like for the last song on the album, we kind of knew that we had to end it with something try to do something grandiose, if you will. So we knew that we were just going to keep it heavy and slow and kind of get into that. I'm not sure how you explain it, but it's kind of a repetitive kind of thing that's going with just chords hammering. So we were going for that in that particular example. But for Don't Look Up, for instance, that was just I had made the riff with the groove and the chorus, and then brought it to the band, and we just sort of arranged it and made the bridge and chorus and all together with the vocal melody. And so that kind of just we just kind of wrote that one together as a band. Because were you gonna say something?
I was just gonna add, because having multiple vocal styles in the band as well, and having very aggressive vocals, some more melodic vocals, do you as a guitar player, do you almost have to fluctuate or change your guitar technique or style to sort of fit the vocal parts in a way too?
Not actually, no. It's so the way that we've been doing it now is mostly write the music first, and then the vocals kind of gets put, not necessarily on top of that all the time, but in most cases I'd say that that's how we have been writing the songs. Trying to create the vocal melody on top of the music that's there.
And I know it's very cliche to ask, what are your inspirations? But I think it's, when you listen to this album, you can't help but notice, clearly everybody in the band has different inspirations. I can't tell. There's certain bands that play where I could be like, let me guess what your favorite band is. The band you sound exactly alike, or if certain bands of certain styles only take inspiration from one source. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it, but I think it's fair to say every member of Rendezvous Point has clearly a different influence of a different style, right?
You're absolutely right. Yeah, yeah. It's so I am pretty much from like a metal, prog metal type of background, with influences of like film music and classical composers, as well as everybody listens to pop music as well, I suppose, because we're all surrounded by it. But before we all studied music together, we came from pretty different backgrounds musically. And I would say Bård as well, the drummer, is also kind of a similar background, but he was more like, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and then the Symphony X and Dream Theater and all those bands. We had that in common, but whereas I was more from like the new metal, punk pop, and metal background, and then keyboard player Nikolai, he was more from like a indie music type of background, I'd say, and Gunhilde, bass player, she was more of a Tool background, and Gammon, he was just like, I don't know, like as a vocalist, I think he listens to a lot of quieter stuff, but also bands like, I don't know if you're familiar with Shining, for instance.
Of course, I love Shining.
Yeah.
The black metal band we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Right.
Of course.
Right. Yeah. So, we all have, and we listen to so much music, all of us, since we're all musicians. So it's hard to pinpoint like one influence. There's just a ton of influences there. Yeah. But I'd say since our music is sort of categorized in the prog metal genre, although it's kind of poppy as well in structure of songs, and there's no screaming. We try to keep it melodic and harmonic and rhythmically interesting. So I guess like a common band that all of us listened to sort of when we were studying together was, we're all familiar with Dream Theater, for instance, of course. And then when the gent genre, if you want to call it a genre, came, me and Nikolai were listening to a lot of the Tesseracts and Monuments and those kind of bands, as well as Meshuggah. We were all huge fan of Meshuggah. And then there's all sorts of other bands and influences.
Yeah. Well, it almost seems like the future of music has really taken a more genreless direction. When you look at bands like Sleep Token or Bad Omens or Spirit Box, it almost seems like, and what's funny is, not to pigeonhole or whatever, but a lot of those bands started off, I don't know so much with Sleep Token, but like with Bad Omens or Spirit Box, Dance Gavin Dance is another one. Mm-hmm. They were very metalcore. Like I remember when Dance Gavin Dance was opening for Upon a Burning Body, and when Bad Omens was opening up for like Era and whatnot. It just seems like a lot of bands that start off in the more metalcore or even prog metal category, like you call it, tend to go off in a very experimental direction and bring pop elements and very harmonizing, even it's like some symphonic elements and whatnot.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting you should mention Bad Omens, because I recently started listening to them like 2 months ago or so, and I'm just like, the Death of Peace of Mind album is like the album I've been listening to for the past few months. Like it's just so good. Yeah, I love that album.
For me, for me, they're one of those bands, Bad Omens, to be like, I interviewed them before, like right when they were touring off of their last album, Finding God Before God Fights Me. It was right before the world shut down from COVID. Okay. Like they were playing at a venue for like 100 people tops, and now they're playing places for like 100,000 people. So
it's insane. I mean, that's really cool that you got to interview them. Did you interview like Noah?
Yes. Yep, Noah Sebastian. Nice, it was a fantastic interview, and it's the second most watched interview on the whole channel, next to Tarja, or Tarja.
Oh, wow.
As people pronounce it. So.
Okay.
But
cool. I got to check that out, though. Yeah, really cool.
Now, I've noticed with bands that take a lot of progressive elements, I don't know if this is maybe the most appropriate question to ask you, but like being a lot of bands that do take progressive elements tend to be very conceptually driven as well. So like, would you consider Dream Chaster or Universal Chaos, etc.? Like, do you almost consider Rendezvous Point's music to almost be concept albums or very conceptually driven?
Um, Not necessarily, no. I think we dabble in different topics and themes, but I wouldn't call it conceptual, maybe, because I feel like that term has more of like a cohesive thing, you know. Whereas, because Garmin is the one writing the lyrics for the band, and so he takes inspirations from his life mainly, and his personal struggles in life. um, and yeah, so it's not like we've sat down and said we want to talk about this, you know. It's more like, you know, Garmin, you're the vocalist, we feel that you should write the lyrics because we feel it's important that your message comes across, you know, in the lyrics you write, because then it's more authentic, I feel like. And we all sort of have different roles in our band, and we've just like figured out that, okay, that's his role to fill that part. But I would say that we have like a common interest for you know, you know, first album Solar Storm, second is like Universal Chaos. There's clearly like space stuff going on here, and Dream Chaster is also like something like abstract, you know, something you can't like touch. So, and we try to have those things on our album covers as well, that like mystique of life and the universe and that kind of stuff, you know. So I guess we're all like gravitated towards that kind of thing.
Well,
although it's
no, please go on.
Although maybe it's not like as much present lyrically, at least in the artwork. That's where we have common ground.
Well, that's the thing too. When they say don't judge a book by its cover, or don't judge a album by its cover either, but I can't help but like look at the Universal Chaos artwork, or the artwork for Dream Chaser, or a Solar Storm, and be like, yeah, this band is clearly saying something with it.
Yeah.
Now, 9 times out of 10, when I ask somebody how a song starts off, a lot of times people say it starts off with a riff. Is it the same case with you guys as well?
Not necessarily, no. It does start off in different ways. Yeah. So, yes, there were riffs as well, but it could be a rhythm idea, just like a rhythm that you can't like shake. You have to like, you think about a rhythm and you have to put it somewhere. You know, it could be either be on the piano or in a vocal melody, or a drum beat. You know, and I think a lot of our songs actually starts with that. Should I say like reference point or whatever you want to call it? Like it's mostly the rhythm where everything starts for us. Yeah.
Oh, that is the first I've ever heard of it. Because the question I was going to ask is, when people tell me that, I was like, do you think we're ever going to run out of riffs one day ever? But I feel like that with the case of Rendezvous Point, it doesn't warrant that type of question. But hey, feel free to elaborate if you think the world will ever run out of riffs one day.
Right. I don't really think so, no. And the reason for that is, if you think about like all the possibilities, it's like, you know, if you're familiar with, you know, chess, for instance, there are like an infinite amount of possibilities in chess, but you have these like kind of fixed rules that in music you have. Oh yeah, there you go. Right. I'm a huge chess fan. I don't know if you are. But,
Oh, I am. I'm not good at, like, I never really win, but I love playing it. You know what I mean? So.
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, but go on.
Yeah, so it's like the chess pieces are sort of the musical notes, you know, and where you put them is kind of what rhythm you choose to use over what kind of like time signature you want to use, or how long you want the riff to be. There's endless possibilities, you know. So I think that and there's endless like scales and whatnot, chords. Well, I guess there is a finite number to it, but in theory, it's kind of like it's endless.
Well, the music of Rendezvous Point is very technically proficient. Like, I could tell that there's a lot of very articulate points you make. The rhythm is impressive, the guitar work, the vocals. But I've always wondered how, because I feel like your music does capture a moment, and to me that is something that's what makes a good song in my eyes, is when it is able to capture a moment. But if you are working on a song for a long period of time, because not to assume, but with how impressive these songs are, I can't imagine that you can come up with them and complete them in a matter of hours. So when you are writing it all together over the course of a couple days and sending it to get mixed and mastered and all that, do you find that the longer you work on it, the harder it is to maintain a moment?
Not really. I think it's more so the other way. Actually, the more we work on it, the better it gets. At least that's how it feels like to us. Because I think that we are like when we're creating something, we are striving to make it as good as we can. And so I feel like when we have the main idea, so let's say drums, bass, guitar, and some keyboard sounds and whatnot. And we feel that this is exciting to listen to. This gets us excited, And then when we have the whole form of the song and we put the melody on, it's just like when you put piece upon piece upon, or stone upon stone, if you will. It gets you more pumped up and more excited for the song, and you just want to keep making it better and better until you're think it's as good as it's gonna get now, and that's when we know, okay, then we have the song.
Yeah. How do you know when you're finished with a song?
Wow. I never thought of that before, actually. How do you actually know? When you have the general form of the song from beginning to end, and you start to have all the elements in place, if you will, and you record everything. And then the final touch is to when you feel like you have everything you need, then we mess around with effects and stuff like that. And our keyboard player, he's really good at that. He's like the producer, if you will, of making all the vocal effects and the keyboard effects and all that stuff. We just sit for days and work on one song at a time until we get all the effects that we want. We experiment a lot, and that's cool, and that's cool, and that's cool. And then we feel like, okay, now there's nothing more to add to it, I guess, We don't want to add more anything to it. It's good as it is. It's perfect. That's when we know, I think. It's done.
It seems like you are always piling stuff up on top, so you realize you can add more into it. Some bands, I feel like, are hesitant to pile stuff on top of each other, like the way you do, because you're worried that you're overcooking the song, you're putting too much in there. But it almost seems like you guys are more worried about adding too little than adding too much.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there are times where we are adding too much stuff, But then usually somebody, because we make bounces of the songs and we send them to the band members, because we can't all five work together at the same time necessarily, because we live far apart in Norway. But when we do send it, they listen to it, and then they get back to us and wait, that thing that you guys put on there, didn't quite like that. I don't think we should have it. And then we kind of discuss those kind of things, and then we end up with either keeping it or removing it. So I guess everybody's ears are always sensitive to what should be there and what shouldn't be there.
Being a band,
it's never too much.
Being a band where you're all separate from each other and you can't really write together by being in the same room. See, a lot of people would argue that that's inauthentic or that's not organic rock and that's not how it should be. But I think it's actually a real blessing in a way. How much music exists now because people from other sides of the world were able to connect and write stuff together.
Totally. And there are so many bands Haken or Periphery or those kind of bands. I mean, they have band members that live on the other side of the Atlantic, and they still tour and make great music and stuff like that. So it's definitely possible. And I think because the way we have been working as well is just okay, let's have a video chat, all five of us, and then we work on our music programs, and we just we have each other there all the time, and we can work on 5 different songs, each one of us. And then if we have questions for each other, then we just unmute and, hey, I was wondering about this for that song and this for that song. So in a sense, when we work that way, it's really efficient. But the downside is that we actually don't play together. It's just the 5 of us sitting in front of each of our computer.
Yeah.
But it's I still feel like we make music that we're happy with, nonetheless.
Yeah.
But I have to agree that, or I have to say that the first album we made all the songs together as a band in when we studied together, and I do miss that feeling because it's like a team kind of thing, and we get to play through the riffs and feel how it feels, with the sound there. So it is a little different experience. And on the first album as well, our songs were a bit longer as a result of that, I think, because we got like excited about the ideas and wanted to roll with it. And a little bit different structured in terms of form and stuff like that. But I do think that's also why maybe the two newer records, Universal Chaos and Dream Chaster, have more of shorter songs, like 4 and 5 minute songs, and more like poppy structure to it than the first album. It might have something to do with it that we're writing online. I'm not sure.
Who knows?
Or if it's just the way we've evolved as musicians. I can't really tell.
But when you finally do get in a room together and start jamming that out, then that feeling is really going to be intense. So I think it's good. I do think that some magic. I'm gonna get so much crap for saying this, but fuck it. Like, I think there's a reason why a lot of older bands, when they put out new albums, maybe it's not as fulfilling as their earlier material because that organic nature that they had of all getting into a room together, they try to replicate that in particularly, and it's just not there anymore. I think like it's a product of the time in a way. That I think the whole remote thing is helpful in that regard.
Oh yeah, I also think that as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. And with all the terrible rock star feuds that we've had over the years, maybe if people did work remotely, they would. So a lot of the lineups that we love would still be together.
Right.
I've always wondered how Guns N' Roses' career would have been differently if they had Zoom at their time.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's interesting to think about those kind of things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today, as well as thank you for just an amazing album. I feel like Dream Chaster is a fantastic record, definitely the best Rendezvous Point album, and I cannot wait for the rest of the world to hear it. Just with the release of this album coming out on the 21st, I believe, is there just anything else with Rendezvous Point you'd like to promote in terms of upcoming tours, or what could we be expecting in the near future?
Well, yeah. So we're definitely working on that as we speak. We're trying to. So the thing is that Bård is also playing with Leprous. So we have to make sure that the schedules aren't conflicting, and that's the biggest thing really, because now our booking agent is talking with Leprous's booking agent, and they're like trying to, hey, do you have an available time slot this time so we can book a tour for Rendezvous Point? So that's where we're at right now, but that will be solved very, very soon, in a matter of days, I think, and then we'll be ready to go on tour when that is.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much, everybody. We are here with Rendezvous Point, Dream Chaster. Pick that up June 21st. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.
Thank you so much, Alex. Appreciate it.